When humanity crossed into the alternate world, everyone transformed into an animal. Some became tigers that thundered through ancient forests. Others became colossal serpents, powerful enough to swallow the sky whole. But you became a spider, the weakest creature imaginable. Still, this world had one saving grace. Every soul that crossed over was granted the ability to evolve, kill prey, earn evolution points, grow stronger. The system was ruthless, but it was fair. Midnight falls over the canyon. If you could see it from above, you'd notice enormous webs strung between the rocky walls, glinting faintly in the dark. You rest motionless at the center of your web when suddenly a vibration, sharp, deliberate. Something is caught. You move, silent, precise. Gliding across the silk toward the trembling source, you find an adult praying mantis thrashing desperately in your trap. It isn't alone. Several other insects have wandered into your web as well. But the mantis is first. You creep closer, open your jaws, and bite down. Crack. Venom floods into its body in an instant. Pure instinct. No hesitation. Ding. Level 2 mantis defeated. Evolution points +2. The mantis is already dead. You pause for just a moment, so killing earns evolution points. Simple enough. You file that away and get back to what matters. Eaten. The mantis disappears piece by piece, and then the system chimes again. Ding. Consuming mantis. EXP +2. The notifications keep coming, and with each one, you watch the experience bar creep higher and higher until finally, ding. Maximum EXP reached. Level up. The moment the words fade, heat explodes through your body. Your frame shudders and expands, legs stretching outward like dark blades. Your whole form growing into something larger, more dangerous. For stronger creatures like tigers or lions, leveling up barely changes anything. The experience required is astronomical, and the gains are minimal. But for something weak at birth, the initial evolution is swift and generous. Hunt a prey or two, and the transformation begins almost immediately. That's the game's twisted sense of fairness. But evolution has its limits. No matter how much a spider grows, it cannot surpass a tiger. That's simply the boundary of its species. To break past that ceiling, you'd need evolution points, enough to shatter what biology has set in stone. That path could wait. For now, you still had room to grow within your own limits. And so the days blurred together. Hunt, eat, level up, repeat, ding, consuming a rabbit, EXP +10, ding, level 5, rabbit defeated. Evolution points +C, a black spider, slightly larger than a closed fist, moves steadily across the remains of a gray rabbit. 8 dark legs carry you with quiet precision. As the carcass disappears beneath you, heat flows through your body again. Familiar now, almost welcome. Level 5. And just as the warmth fades, a new alert appears. Ding. Species limit reached. Conditions for advancement met. Please select your evolutionary path. 5 choices materialize before you. The sickle spider. Blades for legs, built to cut enemies apart in close combat. The venomous spider. A master of poison, patient and lethal. The hunting spider. Silk and strategy, weaving traps to snare prey. The psychic spider. A being of heightened mental power. And finally, the demon-faced spider. A creature that lures others through unnatural attraction. The system adds a quiet reminder. This choice doesn't lock away your future. Even a sickle spider can still develop its venom. The advancement simply deepens one path's unique potential. You don't deliberate long. Oz Spider. The answer comes immediately. The Oz Spider doesn't just boost attack power, it dramatically increases agility as well. 8 legs, each one sharpened to a weapon. More legs means more speed. More speed means more kills. In a world where you'd inevitably face enemies that could crush you, you needed to be too fast to catch. Ding. Please ensure your surroundings are safe. You have 10 minutes. You waste none of them. Silk pours from your body as you weave frantically, spinning yourself into a tight cocoon, white as fresh snow, tucked deep into a canyon corner. The moment the last thread seals around you, the world detonates. A torrent of energy surges from somewhere deep inside you, raw and violent, tearing through every nerve. Pain swallows everything. Consciousness slips away like sand through a fist, leaving only darkness. 10 minutes pass. In that quiet corner of the canyon, the white cocoon sits still, except it isn't purely white anymore. Threads of deep crimson have bloomed across the surface, bleeding through the silk like something alive. Then a sound. Crack, crack, crack. The cocoon shatters outward, and what emerges is nothing like what went in. The spider standing in in the ruins of the cocoon looks carved from black jade. Purple markings trace across its body. Jagged spines line its frame. But none of that draws the eye the way the front legs do. They look like blades. Not metaphorically, literally. Two pitch black limbs over 20 centimeters long, smooth as polished steel, gleaming with a cold, terrifying edge. They slice through the remnants of your own silk like it isn't there. You stare at them for a long moment. Spider of Oz, inferior monster, a small, ferocious predator adept in close combat, wields its front limbs as weapons, capable of cutting through enemies like a scythe. Unique ability, Scythe Slash. Inferior monster. You turn the classification over in your mind. Above inferior would be intermediate. Above intermediate, superior. That giant python from earlier, the one boasting 30 strength and 40 constitution, it had to be inferior rank as well. Its numbers weren't far from yours. You pull up your own panel. Oz Spider, Scythe Spider, Strength 10, Agility 20, Constitution 16, Spirit 12, Skills, Divine Web, Scythe Slash. Normal humans average 10 across the board. Your agility had already doubled that. You let that number sit with you. You shift your attention to the zone chat, a stream of messages from other players scattered across the world. It doesn't take long to find the python. Of course, he's still bragging. Haha, killed another one. Took me 7 whole days, but I finally leveled up. 32 strength, 42 constitution now. Why is my defense so insane? That wolf couldn't even get its teeth through my hide. Your eye twitches slightly reading that. A wolf that couldn't pierce his defense. Terrifying. But underneath the posturing, the information is actually useful. 7 days to level up once. Exactly as you suspected. The stronger the base creature, the more brutal the grind. And when he did level up, his strength and constitution each rose by 2 points. You make a mental note. Then, something else catches your eye. Buried further down in the chat. A different message entirely. Has anyone else noticed you can raise your stats through physical training? I've been doing sit-ups, and my strength actually went up by a point. The icon next to the message is a giant bear. You go still, of course. Of course the game would do that. It was realistic enough to simulate an entire alternate world. Why wouldn't physical effort translate into genuine growth? Your stats weren't fixed to leveling alone. You could push them higher through sheer discipline. You begin sorting through everything you'd observed, piecing together a pattern. Creatures below the inferior monster threshold, common beasts, barely saw gains when they leveled up. Half a point here, a fraction there, but inferior monsters were different. Their growth reflected their racial strengths. The python's defense and strength climbed by 2 each time because that was what pythons were built for. Its agility lagged behind. The wolf, built for speed, gained 2 points of agility per level while everything else trailed. Racial advantage. Each species had a direction it was designed to grow toward, and yours was agility. 2 points per level every time. You would only get faster. You smile at that. A quiet, private smile. Time to get used to this body. You break into a sprint. 6 legs push off the ground simultaneously and the canyon becomes a blur. A black shadow streaks between the walls so fast it doesn't even register as a shape. Just movement. Raw and violent. 20 points of agility. The speed is genuinely terrifying. You stop. Raise one scythe leg. Swing. Crack. A tree splits cleanly in two. The cut is mirror smooth. Not a single splinter out of place. You stare at it for a moment, then click your teeth together slowly. 10 strength, but paired with Scythe Slash, you just halved a tree in one motion. This was what it meant to be a low-ranking, evil beast. Strength on paper told only part of the story, but it still wasn't enough. You turn your gaze to the canyon stretching out ahead of you. Your hunting ground was too small. It was time to expand. And this time, you wouldn't just rely on webs. You'd fight up close, claw to scale, blade to fang. The only way to sharpen combat instincts was to use them. In your past life, you were no one special, just an ordinary person. But your eyes carry something new now. Quiet, focused, certain. A true hunter doesn't have weaknesses. That was the ideal you were building toward. The crash of battle pulls you back to the present. In the outer edge of the canyon, a soccer ball-sized spider and a several meter-long serpent are locked in a vicious fight. The spider, of course, is you. Your scythe claws flash in the dim light, striking again and again, each blow throwing sparks into the air. The iron wire snake coils and lunges back. Level 6. Its body black as ink and hard as stone. Slow, but built like a fortress. If it ever gets those coils around you or lands even one solid would bite, you'd be in serious trouble, which is exactly why it's the perfect training partner. The snake lunges. You twist sideways, retreat a full body length in an instant, and bring your Oz claw down in a sharp diagonal slash. Clang, clang. The sound rings out like a hammer striking an anvil. Its defense has to be around 15. You register the resistance in your legs with quiet frustration. My strength is only 10. Not enough to cut through cleanly. Not yet. But you keep fighting. You activate it without hesitation. Chain slash. A surge of heat floods through your scythe claw, and in the next instant, the iron wire snake, several meters of hardened muscle and iron-tough scales, is hurled through the air. A deep, gaping wound tears across its body. Blood pours freely. The snake lets out a wretched, pitiful shriek, and for the first time, something cold flickers in its eyes. Fear. Then it moves. Swish. The air splits. The snake accelerates. Not the sluggish, grinding pace from before, but something entirely different. Something that makes your heart lurch. Its speed in this final charge is terrifying, closing the distance in a heartbeat. Your scythe claws tremble, poised and ready, and then the snake simply comes apart. Splat, splat, splat. Blood erupts in every direction, painting you red. Where a living creature had been a fraction of a second ago, there is now only scattered ruin, and hanging in the air, almost invisible, countless fine crystalline threads catching the faint light. You had already strung them there, waiting. Left slack, those threads were barely more than silk, but the moment your mind reached for them, they answered, tightening instantly, becoming something closer to razor wire than spider thread, fine enough to be invisible to the naked eye, sharp enough to cut clean through iron-tough scales at full charge. The snake had done the work itself, rushing headlong into a trap it never saw. You stand in the silence that follows and catalog this quietly. A new application, fighting and weaving simultaneously. Never let the battlefield stay simple. You make your way to what remains of the iron wire snake and begin to eat. Ding, consuming level 6. Iron wire snake, EXP, and evolution points multiplying. By the time you finish, your evolution points have jumped to 120, challenging prey above your level. The rewards more than doubled. The experience bar has grown noticeably too. Level 6 is close. You can feel it. You allow yourself a small smile. After the Oz Spider advancement, leveling had become significantly harder. Experience requirements climbed steeply, but that was fine. It meant the power gains climbing alongside them were real. Everything you'd put in during these past days was paying off. You lift your gaze to the regional and global chat channels, and your expression stills. Scattered across the feed, dozens of player avatars have gone dark, grayed out, silent. You stare at them for a long moment. You didn't know whether eliminated players returned to Earth or simply ceased to exist, but one thing was certain. In every way that mattered, they were gone. Food, most likely, or something worse, a death that was anything but clean. You scroll through their final messages. No, I don't want to die. Please, stay back. Someone help me. This wolf won't stop. It's biting me. It's biting me? What is that thing? No. And then one message stops you completely. The avatar is unusual. A human body with a tiger's tail. Male, based on his previous life, but the alternate world had made him into a half-tiger beast woman. Strange, but not the part that unsettled you. His last words were, "It hurts. It hurts so much. Everyone, we're all from the same earth, please. Remember me. Avenge me. Kill them. They're beasts. True beasts." He named a location. He named a tribe. No one knew exactly what he'd endured in his final moments, but the second his message ended, the global chat ignited. "Brother, rest in peace. I'll find them. I'll avenge you." Deep within a distant mountain range, a two-headed wolf threw its heads back and let out a howl that shook the clouds. A small section of the mountainside trembled from the force of it, and if you looked closely, you could see that this fearsome two-headed magic wolf had wet eyes. He'd recognized the tiger-tailed avatar, his roommate from his previous life, the one who had laughed sharply and fiercely to protect herself, back when the world still made sense. He hadn't even had the chance to say her name before she was gone. Just like that, pathetically fast, he began to burn. Flames wrapped around him as grief became something darker, something that fed the demon inside. The global chat surged with voices. Good morning, Earthling. I'll carry it forward for you. Damn these natives. Who do they think they are? Dying is one thing, but dying like that is something I will never forgive. You hesitated for a moment. Then, for the first time, you opened the global channel and typed, "Good morning. If fate allows, I will avenge you." Simple words. Cold, almost. But behind your eyes, something sharp had ignited. Players could fight each other. That was understood. But none of them would ever tolerate being hunted like livestock by the natives of this world. Without realizing it, the people of Earth had become something like an invading force. A fourth plague, arriving in a world that didn't expect them. And as they grew stronger, the mandate became clearer. Conquer or be consumed. You looked up at the alien sky, blue but wrong in ways you couldn't fully name, and stayed still for a long moment. You had to get stronger, much stronger, because uncertainty in this world wasn't a phase you passed through. It was a permanent condition, and only power could soften it. You lowered your gaze. Time to hunt. Webs spread outward from the canyon in every direction, enormous and layered, strung between trees and stone and shadow. You hunted both ways now, hand to hand and web to trap, because every method meant more experience, more evolution points, more strength. All prey was progress. It didn't take long before the web spoke to you, a vibration, distant but heavy, carrying the specific rhythm of something large and struggling. Your silk threads, after their divine enhancement, had become something formidable. Once entangled, escape was virtually impossible unless a creature was strong enough to tear the earth and trees themselves from the ground. Brute force alone couldn't free them. You set off toward the signal. The clearing came into view, and there it was, a wild boar with enormous tusks, thrashing against the ground with everything it had. 1 to 2 meters tall at least, wounds already covering its body. It was enraged and massive, and it clearly couldn't believe something as small as a spider had snared it. What it hadn't noticed was that every time it struggled, more threads wound tighter. Every violent movement deepened its own trap. You watched from a distance, patient, still. A hunter doesn't rush a creature that's already losing. Half a day passed. You fed lightly from smaller webs, insects. Nothing remarkable, just enough to keep your stomach quiet. The real meal was still waiting. By nightfall, you returned to the clearing. The boar was dying. Massive blood loss. Exhaustion had hollowed out its eyes. The fury was still there, barely, but the strength behind it was nearly gone. You began to creep forward. Then it opened its eyes, bloodshot, locked onto you. A deep, guttural roar broke across the night. Cold smile. You fired. Hiss. The thread launched like a bullet, a technique born from the divine enhancement that had transformed your silk far beyond what your level should allow. It punched through the boar's massive body with a sound like a shockwave, leaving a clean, devastating hole straight through flesh and bone. The boar screamed. You fired again. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Each shot drew a shriek that tore through the dark. You didn't approach. Not yet. The chat had taught you that lesson in blood. Player after player, cocky from an easy fight, stepping close to a dying enemy, only to trigger one final explosion of desperate strength. Regret was always the last thing they typed. You waited until there was nothing left to wait for. The boar's breath slowed, then stopped. 6 shots. 6. You clicked your teeth. Back on Earth, 1 would have been enough. Here, mortally wounded and half drained, it still took 6. The toughness of creatures in this world never stopped being humbling. You approached and began to feed. Ding. Consuming epic king tusked boar. EXP plus 200. Ding. EXP plus 200. Ding. EXP plus 200. The notifications stacked rapidly, your experience bar climbing at a pace you hadn't seen in days. Heat rose through your body. Evolution, level 7, arriving in a wave of familiar, almost comfortable pain. Strength, agility, constitution, all climbing. Constitution in particular jumped by 1.5 points. You filed that away carefully. The prey you eat affects how you grow. Tough hide, dense constitution. The boar gave back what it was built from. If you wanted to build your constitution deliberately, these were the creatures you needed to hunt. Then a new line of text appeared. Quiet, almost understated, but it made your pupils contract. Ding. By consuming the epic king tusked boar, you have acquired the skill, Wild Charge. Do you wish to learn? Wild Charge. Consume half your stamina. Temporarily double strength upon activation. Greatly increases speed. Requires 20 constitution. You stared at it. A skill. Pulled directly from the creature you ate. A boar's signature ability. A fearsome, devastating charge. Now sitting in front of you, waiting to be absorbed. Was this available to all players or something unique to you? You didn't know. And right now, now it didn't matter. What mattered was the constitution requirement. You checked. Before level 7, you'd had 18. The boar's tough flesh pushed it to 19.5. Still short, but this was exactly what evolution points were for. It was time to push past the limit. The decision comes quickly. 1,000 evolution points, spent without hesitation. The moment the choice is made, something detonates deep inside you. A roaring current of energy tears through your body like a river, breaking its banks, wave after relentless wave, reshaping you from the inside out. Your body hardens, grows. The spines along your frame stiffen and sharpen, rising one by one like black needles catching light. To anyone watching, you'd look more terrifying by the second. When the transformation settles, you check your panel. Strength, agility, and constitution, each up by 5 points. But that isn't even the most interesting part. You've gained something new entirely. Quill. With a single thought, every hair on your body can be raised simultaneously, each one rigid as a steel needle, ready to drive into anything foolish enough to grab you. You test it now, and the black bristles rise in a wave across your frame. From a distance, you look like a dark, grotesque hedgehog. Vicious, wrong in the best possible way. Good defensive ability, filed away. But the real prize is still waiting. Wild charge. I want to learn it. The words barely finish forming in your mind before a torrent of crimson energy erupts from the remains of the tusked boar king and surges directly into you. It doesn't settle into your bones the way a level up does. Instead, it wraps around you entirely, soaks through every layer of your being, and slowly fades, leaving something behind that you can't quite name until you reach for it. Then you feel it. The crimson heat ignites from somewhere deep and hidden, flooding outward through your body all at once. Your blood feels like it's boiling. Every part of you swells slightly, and a deep red glow bleeds across your frame like embers, breathing in the dark. Boom. You launch. The ground tears. Rocks in your path don't slow you. They explode. Trees cease to exist. You leave a trail of destruction that cuts through the canyon like a scar. And when you finally plant your 6 legs and drag yourself to a halt, dust billows up in waves around you. You stand there panting. It's exactly as violent as it sounds. Half your stamina gone in one burst. You feel like you did after running 1,000 meters in your past life. Utterly spent, limbs heavy, chest burning. Back then your constitution was terrible. You'd collapse after a single lap. Apparently some things carry over. You exhale slowly and think it through. The Boar King used Wild Charge as a weapon. Its size and raw strength turned the ability into a battering ram capable of splitting mountains. When doubled, its strength exceeded 40 points. Combined with that enormous body, it could level terrain. But you? 16 strength doubled is 32. Dangerous, yes. Terrain splitting? Not quite. And your body is small, built for speed and precision, not mass destruction. Wild Charge on a soccer ball-sized spider isn't a killing blow. It's an exit strategy. The fastest escape possible when everything else has failed. One more trump card for staying alive. That was enough. Half a month passed. And when you surfaced from those weeks of relentless hunting, you barely recognized yourself. Level 9. All core attributes hovering around 20, except agility, which had climbed to 31. That number made even you pause. The speed that came with it wasn't just impressive. It was genuinely supernatural. Something no ordinary creature in this world should be capable of at your size. Your body had grown too, roughly the size of a basketball now, with the 6 scythe legs gleaming beneath you like polished blades, and 8 compound eyes burning with cold focus. One look was enough to make blood run cold. You'd grown into something fearsome, and you knew it. Browsing the chat channels confirmed it. Most players, a month in, had only reached level 3 or 4. The fastest among them had barely scraped level 5 or 6. Your level 9 wasn't just ahead of the curve, it was in a different category entirely. The reason wasn't complicated. Other players fought, got hurt, retreated, recovered, repeated. You hunted hunted two ways at once, actively with your claws, passively with webs that worked around the clock, whether you were watching or not. Where other players killed a dozen monsters in a month, you'd taken down 40 or 50. The efficiency wasn't even close. The chat also opened the world up in ways you hadn't expected. You learned that monsters ranged from pitiful to incomprehensible, and then someone described a dragon, a fire dragon, body sheathed in flames like liquid gold, vertical pupils that cut through smoke, a roar that tore clouds apart, heat that could be felt from thousands of meters away, the air itself scorching before it even arrived. You sat with that for a moment. This world had dragons in it, real ones. And then, stranger still, someone in the chat mentioned they hadn't been born yet, conscious inside an egg, aware but immobile, quietly cultivating while still sealed within its shell. The chat went briefly silent after that, because every player who had survived a month knew what that meant. Whatever was still gestating in that egg was something so far above the ordinary monster scale that it hadn't even needed to enter the world yet to be growing stronger. Born at a ceiling no one else could see, you let that settle without resentment. It was simply the reality of this world. The same inequality that existed in the last one, just written in teeth and claws instead of wealth and circumstance. Some were born as spiders. Some were apparently born as legends. The only response was to keep moving, and your response had been working. You thought briefly, almost wistfully, about the 7 spider sisters from the old stories. Loyal, fierce, terrifying in a pack. If you had 7 like that hunting alongside you, the growth rate would be staggering. But that was a fantasy. Even fellow spiders couldn't be fully trusted. Cannibalism wasn't off the table in this world. Trust was a liability you couldn't afford. The chat had been buzzing lately about players forming teams, improbable alliances between wolves and rabbits, mice and snakes. You watched those conversations with narrowed eyes. Maybe they'd hold together, but the moment real danger arrived, those alliances would scatter. You'd seen enough of human nature to know how that story ended. Better to rely on yourself, move faster, grow stronger, claim more. You turned your gaze to the canyon stretching around you and made a quiet decision. From here on, this entire canyon would be covered. Every corner, every passage, every shadow laced with your web. A hunting paradise with no exits that you didn't control. Silk Canyon, yours. But first, level 10. The experience bar sat tantalizingly close to its threshold, and you stared at it with barely contained hunger. Because level 10 wasn't just another number. In this world, level 10 was a dividing line. The point where monsters, humans, and every other race awakened something called an innate ability. A power that transcended ordinary skills entirely. Not learned, not earned through levels, simply unlocked, as though the world finally acknowledged what you were. Wild Charge itself was an innate ability of the Flame Boar King. That alone told you everything you needed to know about the gap between innate abilities and common skills. One doubled strength and shattered rocks with momentum. The other increased your attack by a modest percentage. Whatever your innate ability turned out to be, you needed it. Now, the night deepened. Pale moonlight draped itself across the canyon walls, washing everything in cold gray. And somewhere in the mountain not far from the canyon's edge, something was limping. A wolf, larger than the ordinary kind, fur a deep, striking blue, pressed itself into a corner of the mountain with its entire body trembling. One eye was weeping blood, the wound fresh and agonizing. Something deeper in the mountain had done this to it, something that had demolished its defenses as though they were nothing. In his previous life, he'd been an ordinary, somewhat overweight man who'd never imagined any of this. But when he arrived in this world and discovered he'd become a blue wolf, powerful, fast, built for combat, he'd let himself believe for a moment that he was special, that this was his story. Reality had disagreed violently. "I swear I'll kill you," he breathed into the dark, voice thin with pain and rage. He pushed himself upright. The mountain depths were no longer survivable in his current state. The only direction was out. He staggered downhill, and soon enough, through the trees, the canyon entrance came into view, wide and dark, shaped almost like the open mouth of some vast creature. Something flickered in his one good eye. Hope, maybe, or desperation dressed up to look like it. He moved toward the canyon, unaware of the webs already waiting in the dark. The blue wolf didn't know why, but the moment he stepped toward the canyon's edge, something cold settled in his chest. An instinct, a warning without a source. Then the canyon erupted. Color exploded from every direction, swirling elements of every attribute converging in a storm above the canyon floor, spiraling upward in a column of raw energy. The blue wolf froze. His one good eye went wide, advancing. Something down there is advancing. The smart move was to leave. He knew that. But then he thought about his blind eye, about the baptism that came at level 10, about the possibility of emerging from this whole and whole again. And he thought about a monster mid-evolution, helpless, vulnerable, its core exposed. To advance is to seek revenge. I need this. He suppressed his aura and crept downward. What he found at the bottom stopped him cold. A cocoon the size of a basketball rested deep in the canyon, pulsing with faint light, drawing elemental energy into itself from every direction. But that wasn't what made him swallow hard. It was everything surrounding it. For hundreds of meters in every direction, the canyon had been transformed. Trees, rock faces, open air, all of it consumed by a vast layered architecture of white silk. Countless webs, dense and deliberate, converting the entire canyon into a single enormous trap. Captured within them, birds, rabbits, a large python struggling without progress, creatures that had simply wandered in and found no way out. The blue wolf stared at it all and felt something he hadn't felt since arriving in this world. Genuine terror. What kind of monster built this? He typed quickly into the regional chat, hands trembling slightly. Lone blue wolf, brothers. You will not believe what I'm looking at. An entire canyon turned into a world of white spider silk. And whatever lives here, I think it's advancing right now. The replies came fast. Little squirrel. What? King Python, did you hear that? King Python. Don't waste words. We only get 3 uses a day. Blue wolf. If that thing is mid-evolution, that's your window. Move fast. Little squirrel. I'm so jealous right now. The blue wolf almost smiled. Almost. Then his gaze drifted to the canyon wall, and his pupils shrank, carved into the rock face. Deep, deliberate marks. Not claw scratches. Not territorial damage. Something more structured. Something that looked, if he was being honest with himself, like writing. Chinese characters. From a past life. A player. The blue wolf went still, completely silent, even in the channel. He stood there for a long moment thinking. Players could be allies. Players could be enemies. The system had warned about both from the beginning, but right now, with his eye bleeding and his body wrecked, and this thing sitting in its cocoon collecting power, the math was simple. He was level 8. The magic pearl inside that cocoon could carry him past 9 entirely, straight to 10. And level 10 meant baptism, rebirth. His eye fixed. Don't blame me, blame your bad luck. He opened his mouth. Boom. Green light gathered between his jaws, coiling and sharpening. A wind blade nearly half a meter long, crackling with compressed air. The blue wolf's most fearsome weapon. Among low-level monsters, it was virtually uncontested. Wind wolves moved in packs, and when an entire pack unleashed wind blades simultaneously, they could strip half a forest bare in seconds. Even alone, one blade could cut through wood and stone without resistance. He fired it straight at the cocoon. The blade tore through the air and stopped, not against the cocoon, against something in front of it, something he couldn't see. The wind blade simply ceased, deflected without drama, as though it had struck an invisible wall. The blue wolf blinked, fired again, same result. A long silence. His remaining eye swept the canyon floor slowly, and unease crept up through his chest like cold water. Then the night moved. Snap, snap, snap. Crystalline threads, nearly invisible, sliced through the air from multiple directions simultaneously. The blue wolf had no time to react. They hit him like a net dropped from above, wrapping, tightening, driving through his body, and pinning him to the ground with brutal efficiency. He howled. The sound echoed off the canyon walls and came back to him as silence. Despair arrived cleanly and completely. He understood instantly. Not an ordinary player, not even a strong one, in the usual sense. Something that sat above the rankings entirely. A pinnacle existence that had been quietly building this canyon into a killing ground while everyone else was still figuring out how to survive. He began typing frantically in the regional channel. Lone blue wolf. Brothers. Help. I've angered something terrible. I'm pinned in its webs. Please, someone. Little squirrel. Wait, is that the same spider? King Python. You attacked a player? The channel went quiet after that. The blue wolf lay there, bound and bleeding, and did the only thing left to him. He hoped that whatever was inside that cocoon would wake up, see a fellow earthling, and decide mercy was worth more than a meal. Inside the cocoon, the world had dissolved entirely. What remained was power, raw, flowing, growing, incomprehensible mana, threading through every part of you like a second bloodstream coming online for the first time. Level 10. You could feel it now in a way that previous levels hadn't prepared you for. Mana wasn't just energy, it was presence. It moved through you with its own character, its own weight, and yours was dark, a deep, corrosive darkness. You could see it flickering across your own body like a black flame, subtle and lethal. Dark mana. It didn't burn or shock or freeze. It ate through things, corroded, dissolved, patient and thorough in the way that only true darkness could be. But the mana revelation wasn't even the most significant thing waiting in your panel. You scanned your skills and your gaze stopped. Innate ability. Puppet. Level 1. Capable of covering a target's body with threads of silk, manipulating their movements without their knowledge. You stared at that for a long time. Puppet. Just the name alone said everything. Silent, invisible, no brute force required. Simply reach out, thread by thread, and turn a living creature into an extension of your own will. In its current form, at level 1, a careful target might still detect the threads if they knew what to look for, but you already understood where this ability was going. As you leveled, the threads would become finer, more responsive, more complete, and at its theoretical ceiling, fully mutated, pushed to its divine limit through your system, a target wouldn't just be slowed or hindered. They'd be moved, spoken through, entirely yours. You clicked your teeth slowly, terrifying, even by your own standards. Then you turned your attention to the system itself, the true engine underneath everything, because reaching level 10 had clarified something important. The system's real value wasn't just giving you skills, it was breaking ceilings. Every skill had a mastery cap, a point where no amount of practice or evolution points could push it further. But the system ignored that. When a skill hit its limit and stalled, the system stepped in and carried it past. Wild